Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jodi and I'm really glad that you're here today. And welcome to today's Friday Face Off where we are talking about foundation. Before I get too far into today's face off and which two brands are gonna face off, I just wanna give you a little sneak peek. Next Friday is one that I'm equally as excited about. It is also a Foundation Friday face off. It's a lot of F's. We're gonna go up against the $130 Clé de Peau, against the $150 Tom Ford. That is next week. This week, we are going to put the YSL All Hours up against the Milani 2-in-1. Why did I select these two? Let me give you the breakdown. Both medium to full coverage. Both satin to matte finish. Both claim to have 24-hour wear, all-day wear. Both are water-based as their main ingredient. This one has an SPF of 30, where this one is cruelty-free. When you look at their marketing material, they both claim to do relatively the same thing. Again, $56 for 0.8 ounces, $11.99 for 1 full ounce. So we're gonna put them on and see how they wear. The thing I like about a medium to full coverage is you can thin it out by putting it on with a moisturizer. You can also thin it out by putting it on with a dampened beauty sponge, which is what we're gonna do today. Today's application will be without a primer. We're gonna also do a check-in at about the 8-hour mark. Tomorrow's application will be with a kabuki brush and with a primer. The third day, we're gonna put these on with a damp beauty sponge and with a layer of light powder to set. I think between those 3 different variations, you should be able to find your application somewhere in there with just a few adjustments. But I wanted to give everybody a good idea of how these will perform without being able to do it under every different circumstance that you put on your individual makeup. So I'm excited to see how these wear. The reason I wanted to do these two is because I'm just gonna rant for a second. If you guys have followed me at all for any length of time, you know that this is I'm in love with this. I was off the market. I was done looking, I was done searching. I had found my happily ever after. And then over time, they changed. I know I sound like a Hallmark novel right now, but my foundation has changed formulas. And I could just ask L'Oreal why. Why, L'Oreal, would you change this? Just to add hyaluronic acid? I mean, really, we have hyaluronic acid in our moisturizer. It's in our sunscreen. It's in our blush. It's in our contour. It is in almost everything anymore. If I could have my old formula of this back, minus the hyaluronic, and I don't know if it's the hyaluronic acid that has changed this, but not only has the formula changed, but the colors are probably my bigger complaint. I knew what color I wore. I took the time to find the new color in this new one, and I liked it in the beginning. For the first couple weeks, I really did like it and thought, great, it looks a little nicer even as a finish than the old formula. But with time, I kept going, something's off with my color. I would add a lighter concealer, thinking maybe my concealer was wrong. I'd add a different color bronzer and contour to adjust the shadowing and the shades to just, it took me a process of elimination, working with each of those other products and changing them and eliminating them until I could truly identify that it was this. It's the undertone is more orangey, more warm, more yellow than the old ones. And I've tried a few different shades, but at $56 and returning and $56 and returning, it just became a bit of a nightmare. And so I think we're gonna have to, I think I'm back on the market. I think we're breaking up and I am on the hunt for a new foundation. And so if you are in the same boat as me and you loved your YSL, then you are welcome to take this journey with me and we will find, there's some good alternatives. I am gonna try the NARS Light Reflecting. I'm really excited about this one. And then of course we've got, you know, the big heavy hitter luxury ones coming up next week. So that's not in everybody's price range, I understand, but many of you do like luxury foundation. So we're gonna see how these two line up. So if you guys are ready, let's put these two foundations to the Friday face off. All right, can I just tell you guys how glad I will be to get this on, because doing my makeup with my eyes first and then my foundation is just so hard for me. It seems so backwards. And even my husband today, he said, well, if it's called foundation, why are you putting it on last? Shouldn't that go on first as the foundation? And I said, yes, honey, that makes complete sense to most people, yes. But today's a special day. We're gonna just do things a little bit backwards. So the way I wanted to do this today, you guys, is we are going to take the YSL All Hours on the one side, of course, and the Milani 2-in-1 on the other side. No primer today. I'm gonna do it now and then we'll do a check-in at about between 8 and 10 hours. We'll see how long I last, but more than 8, less than 10. And just like everyday use, I wanna put the foundation on over any contouring that I would typically do, keeping it somewhat minimal, again, just to be a little bit more mainstream and consistent with how many of you would do it. So I'm just gonna go a little bit along the jawline. And I'm also going to use a little bit of a cream blush because that would be how I would normally do my makeup. And I wanna see how this works. So we're just gonna take a little bit of cream blush with a synthetic brush. Oh, nice. Okay, so note to self, the NARS Orgasm Cream Blush does not last very long. Can you guys see how spotty that just went on? That's ridiculous considering this is like expensive blush. Okay, well it blends out nice, but still we should not have to go through that every time. That's very disappointing. Okay, well, we're committed now and we want to treat both sides fairly, so we're gonna just go with it. Okay, a little bit like Bozo the Clown right now, but that's all right. This is just how it works. And then the last thing I have to do is put on some concealer because these eyes, and I just recently discovered my love for NARS concealer this is in custard, and the lady talked me into it, and I knew it was vanilla I should have used, and she talked me into custard, but I forgot why I stopped using this concealer. It must have been, you know, like everything else, something newer and greater comes along and you think, oh, that's probably way better than the one I've been using. And maybe it is. I'm sure there's a reason why I changed. I just don't remember what it is at this moment. All right, so now that I have on those 3 typical things that I would put on underneath my foundation, one thing to think about when you're using a variety of foundations is make sure that the base of your foundation, if it's oil-based or water-based, is the same base as your concealer so that it blends out nicely and that the two meld together. We know oil and water don't mix, so if you have an oil-based product and you're trying to blend it and smooth it and transition it into a water-based product, it's just not gonna lay as smoothly as you would like for it to. This is the YSL All Hours. It is a satiny matte finish. It comes in 40 shades and sells for $56. It is said to have 24-hour wear, sweat-proof, transfer-proof, waterproof, and has an SPF of 30. The first 3 ingredients are water, dimethicone, and isododecane. The EWG website gives the dimethicone an interesting score. There were so many ingredients that make up dimethicone that some of the ingredients had a 1 is their rating, and some had as high as a 3. If you're not sure what I'm talking about with the EWG, I'll put a link down below, and also last week's Friday Face Off. They do a lot of great work. One of the things that they do is they have a skin deep analysis on their website that will allow you to put in different ingredients and gives you a score to help you better understand if these are more on the harmful scale or not so harmful scale of ingredients. So check that out. I'll link it right up here if you want to know more about the website. And the reason I'm going to put it on with a damp beauty sponge is because there are really 3 ways to apply a foundation or a liquid base, and that is either with your fingers, and that's typically if you want a more full coverage. If you want a medium coverage, sort of nice blending, then a damp beauty sponge is a great option. And or your third option is with a buffing brush or a kabuki brush. I like to put it on with a damp beauty sponge, then rinse out my beauty sponge and let it air dry so that it minimizes the opportunity for bacteria growth. If you're gonna use a beauty sponge for powder, that's when you wanna use that dry. So you can see I just used 2 little drops, and I'm just gonna sort of spread those throughout the area. Now you'll notice I did not blend in the lines underneath, the contouring and the blush, and that's okay. As we push this in with the beauty sponge, those will blend but not move, which is one of the reasons I like doing this, because it's a very fast way of getting that under sculpting done without a gazillion steps. So with that, we're just gonna press it in. Now this foundation I know wears beautifully. It does not take a lot. It doesn't transfer. I can't say that it's sweat proof or waterproof. With minimal effort, you can see that that contour and that blush, they're there, but it's just a hint of them, which is how I like to wear my makeup. And we will just sort of leave it at that for right now. Now for this side, we're gonna go with the Milani 2-in-1 Concealer Plus Foundation. The reason they're paired again is because this is a satiny matte finish, medium to full coverage, buildable. So the finish is the same, the coverage is the same, and the price point is not. This is $11.99, again, for 1 full ounce. This one is cruelty-free. It claims in the marketing that it has all-day wear. It doesn't specify how many hours, just says all day. So we're gonna again test at that 8-hour mark. And it also claims to be sweat-proof and waterproof. They both come in a pump, which I like. So you can kind of get a sense for the consistency. This YSL is a little runnier, not much. Boy, those colors don't really match that great, so my makeup will look fantastic today. So we gave it 2 pumps, the same as the other side. And we're just gonna put that everywhere. And same thing, we're just gonna push and blend. Gosh, I wear both of these at different times. I don't think I've ever noticed how different in color, because actually when they're on, it doesn't look like one side is that much lighter than the other. Does it on camera? Because it doesn't to me in the mirror. This one is also very easy to go on. You can see I'm just pushing into my skin, and it is having that blurring effect over the contour and blush that we put on just before. No primer, as I said. The finish is very similar. Neither one of them dry down to be a matte finish per se, which they both say it's more of a satin or a natural matte finish. So to see if these are truly transfer proof, we're just gonna take some white tissue, AKA toilet paper, because to me, transfer proof means when I go to hug someone and they have a white shirt on, am I gonna leave half of my face on their clothes? Or if I go to change my own clothes, is the majority of it going to end up around my collar? And there you go. So I don't see much makeup on either one of these. I think there's a little bit more on this one, but to be honest, that looks more like my lipstick. So I don't think they've transferred. I'll check in with you guys and see if either one of them start to get more shiny, if there's any oil breaking through. I typically get a little shiny right around my nose, so we'll see how those wear. And I'll see you in about 8 to 10 hours. All right, you guys, so it has been a long but wonderful day, and we're gonna do a 10-hour check-in. It's now 10:30 at night. My niece, who is in 7th grade, had a junior high basketball game. So I was under the very flattering fluorescent lights at a high school gymnasium, and I asked my cousin, can you tell any difference in my makeup? How does it look today? And I was giving her every angle and shade and lighting, and I said, do both sides look the same, or does anything look different to you? And she said, no, both sides look the same. Why? So I went on to tell her. And I'm only sharing that story with you because I think an outsider's perspective was genuine and authentic and helpful in this review, because I know what we're looking for. So what are we looking for? Let's zoom in and take a close look. What I see is that neither one of them stayed on my nose, which is not unusual if I don't set it with powder. I think my nose must just get really warm or something and just melts it off. But we didn't set it with powder. That's on day 3. We'll see how they hold up then. I see some settling in these lines. Again, not unusual, and the amount of settling is very similar on both sides. So I can't say that one performed better than the other in settling into fine lines. And I would say that for the length of time that these foundations have been on, this amount of settling is acceptable. It's not very visible. You wouldn't know it if you weren't right under these lights to see it. So far, everything is very comparable. I think the one thing that I would say is that I see a little bit more, it's worn off a little bit more on this side, and that's the Milani. But then if I look at this side, it's a little worn off here, but maybe not as much. During the basketball game, I was trying so hard not to put my hands on my face, and I do that sometimes. So I'm not 100% sure that I caught myself every time. Some of that wearing could be from that. So if I did do that, it didn't transfer onto my sleeve, so I guess that's a good thing. And since we're talking about transferring, it's the end of the night. My natural oil on my skin has been there for now 10 hours on this foundation. If it was ever gonna transfer or slip, I would think now, as the day has gone on, would be the time. So I wanna end the day with a transfer experiment. Just gonna press on both sides and see. And I don't see much transfer at all. Yeah, on either one of these. So they are transfer proof. They are sweat proof. It was hotter than heck in that gym today. And I think it wore as good as I would expect any foundation to wear after 10 hours with no primer and no powder. Okay, you guys, so here we are on day 2, and we are going to wear a primer. I already have my moisturizer and my sunscreen on my face. Those have been the same and will be the same throughout the duration of these tests. So we're gonna go in with a little bit of primer, and I use the Guerlain primer with the gold flakes in it. I think I shared with you guys that I found this at It's normally like almost $100. I found it at Costco for don't let me lie, like under $70. So if you wear this and you have a Costco membership, check it out at Costco. So I just did one pump, and I can't wait to put on makeup because I always look so crazy without foundation when everything else is done. So I'm just gonna put this where we saw that the makeup sort of wore off yesterday. Now I do think that part of why that makeup wore off was because it sat on top of a cream blush. And we're gonna do that again today, just to see how it starts to wear through. Now, the nice thing about doing your makeup with that under sculpting where you have the contour and the blush under your foundation is if your foundation starts to wear a little bit throughout the day, what is coming through is the blush and or the contour. So it's not totally a bad thing unless it wears off in other parts. Now again, yesterday we saw it wore off really only on the cheek and on this Milani side, and it could have been because that blush was underneath it. So not totally a bad thing. So this primer I'm just gonna put around my chin where I have enlarged pores, a little bit on the cheeks, and then right around my nose where I also have large pores. Just gonna let that sit for a second, and then we will go in with our foundation. So put them in the right hand so I don't confuse everybody. We're gonna give them a good shake. While that primer is setting in, I'm just gonna do a little bit of contour just in this area so that we are treating all things the same. And a little bit along here. Whenever I eat carbs or sugar the day before, I can see it in my jawline more than anything. If I don't eat carbs and sugar, then my jawline stays a little bit tighter, taut. You would think that would be a good enough deterrent to not eat sugar, but it's not. And just like yesterday, I'm gonna go in with a little bit of cream blush. Not the cream blush we tried yesterday because that was the NARS and you guys saw how that went on and it was dreadful. So I'm just gonna go in with an older Clé de Peau cream blush that I have just so that we can, again, under sculpt and see how all of this wears. I love the way Clé de Peau cream blushes go on. This is color 4. And I'm sure it has a name, but on the bottom of the jar in very small print, it says number 4. So today, not only are we gonna use a primer, we're also gonna put it on with a synthetic brush, and then we're gonna buff it out with a dual fiber brush, which is how I normally would do my foundation. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna do 1.5 pumps. There's the YSL. Putting it on with this brush, it definitely goes on a little more full coverage, which is why I prefer on a day-to-day basis a damp beauty sponge, because it just looks, I think, more, it goes on more sheer to medium, where with the brush, it does go on more thick and a little bit more on the full coverage side. So I'm just gonna take a dual fiber brush and buff this out so that it gets rid of any lines that I might have created with that first application brush. So you can see it covers nicely. Now, if you notice that you've got some patches where maybe foundation is not grabbing or maybe it's grabbing too much, then you'll want to use a good exfoliant, one that's got a little bit of a light scrub in it, because typically what that is caused by is dry skin, where the foundation is really grabbing onto that dead flaky skin that hasn't completely come off. So we're gonna do the other side with the Milani, just a few dots. And then just like the other side, we'll see how it blends and covers the contour and the blush and how well it goes on with this brush. So this Milani covers that blush and the contour just fine. And it just blends that overall look. If you're in a hurry and you want just a little bit of contour and that natural blush look, I think this is the way to do it. Now I can tell right off the bat by putting both of these foundations on with that brush, instead of the beauty blender like we did yesterday, gave them a thicker application, and immediately my pores are showing on both sides. So that is likely going to get worse as the day goes on. We shall see. And I did not put primer right through here, so we can't blame that extra pouring. Is that even a word? We can't blame that on the primer because it just was not there. And now we're just gonna put on some concealer. And I'm gonna use the same concealer. This is NARS in Custard. And I wanna use the same concealer because we know it doesn't slip with this foundation. I'm just gonna press that concealer in with a synthetic brush and give it a nice clear little line. So yesterday we tested if these were transfer proof and found out that they were. Today we're gonna see if they're sweat proof. I'm gonna work out, do a check-in with you guys after that, and then a final check-in at the 8 to 10 hour mark, somewhere like that. I'm not gonna set any of it with a powder. It's really hard to not contour with the powder right now. I really wanna just contour this, but I won't in the sake of beauty experiments. So let's put this to the test and see if it's sweat proof. Okay, you guys, so it looks like that truck is right behind me, but it's pulled off on the side of the road. I just realized in the video that probably looks like, Jodi, you're gonna get hit. I just got done going for a run, and you guys are getting first look of how this wore. This looks like it's worn pretty well, and this side looks like, let me get back in the sun, that it wore, yeah, equally as good. So I'd say they're probably both sweat proof. We will see how it looks in another, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours. I can tell you that my hair will not be looking any better after it's been in this hat. So pre-warning for this evening's check-in. We'll see how it goes. Well, here we are at the 9.5 hour check-in. I couldn't go any longer. I've got to go take this makeup off and go to bed, but I did want to check in and let you guys see how this is holding up. I will say that first of all, this mascara is from this morning, and it's that Essence I Love Extreme that we did in last week's Friday Face Off. So if you didn't check that out and you're looking for a good mascara that really works very well and is under $5, then you'll want to check out that video. But these lashes are just still phenomenal. Can't say as much for the eyeshadow, and after using this concealer from NARS again for a couple days, I remember why I stopped using it. But we're not here about the concealer, we are here about this foundation. What was obvious to me was that this side, where the Milani side, is just a little more worn than this side. However, what I like about that is it's worn evenly and it doesn't look patchy. All right, guys, welcome to day 3 of our face off. Today is all about the setting powder. What that means is there's no primer, and we are going to use a light dusting of a translucent setting powder. Just as a reminder, the YSL is on this side and the Milani is on this side. I did it with a damp beauty sponge off camera because at this point you guys have seen me apply foundation twice in the last 20 minutes. So I just wanted to speed things up so we can get onto this last day. No primer, as I said, and we're just gonna go in with a little bit of light translucent powder. If you have oily skin, watching how these foundations work under a powder will be really important because you want to add powder in any areas that you tend to get oily. If you wear glasses, you'll want to make sure that you have powder underneath your rims. That helps your glasses from sliding. With dry skin, you can still put a little bit of powder in certain areas if you just need it to last. I need it to last, obviously, under my eyes, which I have not set yet because I didn't want to do any powder without you guys being here. But I also need to use a little bit of powder, and I like to apply my powder with a small taper brush. And I just go into the lid because I really don't like a lot, because I don't have oily skin, but I don't have dry skin. I do get some oil right through here. So then I'm gonna also just take a little bit of this light dusting of powder. I just wanna see how it holds the foundation on the cheeks, on both sides. And just like that, we'll see how these two foundations can hold up in the final stretch of this face-off with powder, no primer. I'll see you guys in about 8 hours. Okay, so here we are for our final check-in of this week's Friday face-off. And I have to say that after 8 hours of wearing these two foundations with setting powder, I think they are both really, really beautiful foundations. They wore the same, the finish is the same, and the amount of time that they lasted has absolutely been the same. I think that either of these foundations are beautiful. I think that the price point of the Milani of $11.99 makes it a better buy. However, I don't think I'm in love with either one of these foundations because they didn't perform as well with the primer, day 2. I thought day 2 was just a little spotty, little patchy. They both performed well on day 1 without the primer, and then today they're stunningly beautiful. But I don't think that one is $44 more beautiful or more outperforming than the other. So there would be my final thoughts on that. If you're looking for a good foundation, if you have oily skin or normal skin, then you can't go wrong with either one of these. The Milani is just a much better price point. If you have dry skin, I don't know that either one of these would be a good option because for these two foundations to perform their best, they needed to have a little bit of setting powder. And that's typically not ideal for those of you with more dry or more maturing skin. So the hunt for a new holy grail for me is still on. Next week, we've got the Clé de Peau up against the Tom Ford. Then for a few weeks, we will do other products. And then in February, we will do another Friday face-off, which will be back to foundation. And we'll take the NARS Light Reflecting up against the House Labs by Lady Gaga. This is gonna be a matchup that I'm really excited about. So that will be in February. Next week is Tom Ford and Clé de Peau. And I will see you guys soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.